Welcome to Southern Sudan Diversity. My name is Tito.
After 8 years, breaking ethics laws has become as synonymous with these Liberals as higher taxes. And now, for a record fifth time, a Liberal minister has been caught breaking ethics laws at a time when Canadians are struggling to afford to heat their homes and put food on the table for their families. The trade minister was finding the time and taxpayer money to line the pockets of her insider friend. Another day, another lawless Liberal under this lawless Prime Minister. So will the minister do the right thing and cut a check to make restitution for her corruption?
The Honourable Minister for Small Business.
Mr. Speaker, the Commissioner has reviewed this issue and has reached his consensus or his conclusion. And to this House, I apologized. I regret that I made a mistake. I should have recused myself. At the time, it was quite urgent that we communicated with Canadians, particularly small businesses, about those urgent supports that were needed. But I do regret that I did not recuse myself, and for that I apologize to this House. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, it's unfortunate but not surprising that the minister won't make it right after serving under this Prime Minister who has twice himself been found guilty of breaking Canada's ethics laws. These Liberals exist solely for the purpose to hold on to power. They divide Canadians, pit neighbour against neighbour, and line the pockets of Liberal insiders while they're at it. So, will the Prime Minister today ask for this minister's resignation?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
No.
The Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
After 8 years, yet again, another Liberal patronage scandal. Not content with gifting lucrative government contracts to hateful anti-Semites, now the Minister of Diversity, member for York Simcoe, handed $93,000 to a staffer's sister for public relations advice. Mr. Speaker, it's not difficult to realize that handling over taxpayers' dollars to your staff's family is a bad idea. Yet here we are again. Mr. Speaker, will the minister do the only responsible and dignified action and pay back the money?
The Honourable Minister.
One of the most important duties of any member of Parliament is to communicate with their riders. That's why members of Parliament are permitted to use their operating budgets via service providers to help them communicate with their constituents. In this case, a small business in Toronto was hired by my constituency office to offer assistance in providing communication services to my constituents. Let me be clear, the rules were followed, the contract with this organization was publicly disclosed, and the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner has advised that there is no conflict of interest. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'Honorable Député de Montmagny.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Disley, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, even after spending $54 million on the ArriveCAN application, the official languages commissioner has criticized the government in this file. When traveling to the U.S., a citizen was not able to obtain the application in its French version, even though French is one of our two official languages, Mr. Speaker. The government spent a fortune on a service that ended up violating Francophones' rights. This government has been in power for 8 years. Will it finally admit that it's simply incompetent? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I agree with my colleague that it's essential that when we launch a service that it be available in both official languages, and that's exactly what we did with ArriveCAN. When the public raised some concerns, then all efforts were made to increase the level of service. We will continue to invest to offer the service in both official languages. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, after years of insistence from Quebec, the provinces, and the Bloc Québécois, there will finally be a meeting of the Premiers and the Prime Minister on health transfers on February 7th. But the federal government is lowering expectations and is calling it a working meeting to discuss the needs, but we know what they are, that Ottawa cover 35% of health costs. For 28 months, all of the premiers have been repeating that, and they did that again this morning in a press release. So the federal government knows what the needs are. Will it bring its checkbook to the meeting on February 7th? The Honourable Minister of Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are very pleased to answer this question because we're all looking forward to further developments on this, including February 7th, when the First Minister's meeting will occur and when we can discuss the various efforts made over the last few months by the federal government and in the last years, where the government spent billions of dollars to save lives and strengthen our system and to ensure that we have the health system that we need in Canada. The Honourable Member, Mr. Speaker, during this time, the situation has only gotten worse in our hospitals. In fact, the situation is so bad that exhausted nurses in Maisonneuve-Rosemont refused to come to work 2 weeks ago, and are threatening to leave their jobs. We no longer need working meetings. We need results. Quebec and the provinces have clearly stated their needs, and they've been doing that for 28 months. They repeated it again this morning. So on February 7th, will Ottawa at least put some money on the table to prove that it's negotiating in good faith? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, putting money on the table is what we've been doing for years. With a $72 billion additional investment in the Canada Health transfers, and by covering 80% of
Thanks for watching. Please feel free to suggest any topics to be covered by South Sudan Diversity, and remember to subscribe if you like what you see.